Hello beautiful people, Miss Beeching here. I'm going to explain to you in this video how to define variables. So this is a process where we take variables in equations, usually represented by letters, and we write down exactly what that letter is representing. Because say we have an equation like this. I want to draw that in a different color. Say we've got an equation like this, a plus 5 equals b. All right, cool, we've got an equation, but what does this equation actually mean? We don't really know unless we define our variables and say, okay, well, what does a represent? It could represent a bunch of different things. What does b represent? That could also represent a bunch of different things. You know, a could be the number of apples in a bag. It could be the cost of yogurt, or cost of a yogurt. It could be the weight of my cat. It could be a bunch of different things. Anything that can change could be that variable. So this equation doesn't really mean much until we actually say, like, what does this letter represent? All right, and B could represent a bunch of different things too. So some of the examples that are in the gather are, you know, the number of memes that I see a day. Just some fun ones. Or it could be the temperature right now. Could be anything, as long as it changes. So let's actually look at what defining variables looks like in detail. Say we've got an equation in a real life situation, something like this, where we've got y equals 100x. Now, the process of defining variables is the part that comes next. So this is defining variables. So we're going to write each of our variables down and write an equal sign next to them. And then after the equal sign, we're going to write some words that really clearly describe what that variable is all about. So let's say in this scenario that y represents the number of minutes of Netflix you watch. Let's say in a week. Oh, actually in total. I'm going to go in total. So minutes of Netflix watched. It could be another streaming service too, if you don't have Netflix. And let's say X, the thing that affects the number of minutes of Netflix that you're watching, is the number of days you've spent in isolation so far. So now we've defined our variables because we've written down what each variable equals. Right? So this process here, where we write down what each variable equals, that is defining variables. And it's really important to define your variables clearly. So a common mistake I see when people start doing this, and this is something that even like year 11s and 12s do if they forget how to define them clearly. They'll write something like this. They'll say X equals money. Now that's not very clear, right? I don't like that because, I mean, what about money? Is it the amount of money I have? Is it the amount of money you owe me? Is it the prize money for something? This is not very clear. And it's not very specific either. So let's change this to something that is a bit more specific. And obviously it depends on the situation that you're in. But instead, let's make this a bit better. So let's say X is the total amount of money that you owe me. Let's say in this fun hypothetical situation, you owe me a bunch of money. And I'm also going to include a unit because you owe me money in dollars, not yen, not euros. You owe me money in dollars. So I'm going to include the fact that it's dollars. So this is a lot better. This makes me happy because this is clear and it's quite specific. And we've even included a unit. which is really nice. Sometimes you can't include a unit. Say if it's like the number of apples, it doesn't really make sense to include a unit, but a lot of the time you can include a unit. So that's how to define variables, and just a tip on how to define your variables really clearly. So make sure they're nice and specific and that they're very clear to the person reading it what the variable's about. Thank you guys for listening. Good luck with the skill, and I'll see you next time.